Hello students, how are you all? I hope you all are absolutely safe and fine at your places. So welcome back to your English class. Today we'll begin chapter 2 from NCERT English book class 10, which is Long Walk to Freedom by Nelson Mandela. So before we begin anything about the chapter, I would like you to read this complete name of Nelson Mandela. How will you pronounce it? Okay, the correct pronunciation is Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela. Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela. Yes, you heard it right. Now you might be confused, why are we pronouncing this as Rolihlahla? Okay, so let me tell you. Basically, Nelson Mandela was from a tribe of Xhosa speakers. Xhosa is a dialect of Bantu language. Bantu is an official language of South Africa. So as you all know, Nelson Mandela is from South Africa. He was among the tribe of Xhosa speakers. And in their language, they have a range of consonants which we actually do not have in English language. So that is why each word cannot be written or pronounced as it exactly is. And this Rolihlahla is an anglicized pronunciation of this word, which is a word from the Xhosa dialect of Bantu language. So because we cannot translate or we cannot write each word as it is in different language. For example, if you take any word from your local language and if you wanted to write as English, you won't be able to write or pronounce it in the same way as you do in your local language. I hope the confusion about the pronunciation is clear here. Let us now move on. Okay, so I would like to repeat. It is Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela. Okay. Now, these are the few terms I would like you all to know before we begin the text. Biography. Biography is a story of someone's life written as a book. If someone's life story has been written as a book, that book is called biography. Now, autobiography. Autobiography is again a story of one's life written as a form of book. But now what is the difference between biography and autobiography? Biography is written about a person's life by somebody else, and autobiography is written by one's life by the person himself or herself. So if a person writes about his life, that story is called autobiography. And if a person writes about somebody else's life, or if a person writes somebody else's life story, then it is known as biography. So why do we need to know this? Because this chapter, Long Walk to Freedom, is an extract from the autobiography of Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela. So autobiography, Nelson Mandela has written his autobiography, and this chapter is a part of his biography, an extract from his biography, from his autobiography. Okay, next is apartheid. Again, notice the pronunciation here. This is apartheid for the same reason, I believe. Apartheid. Now, what is apartheid? Apartheid was a system of racial discrimination which was followed in South Africa, and the discrimination was on the basis of color or creed. So, apartheid was a racial discrimination and people were separated, they were segregated on the basis of their color, and that system was known as apartheid. When it began, it might be a moderate system, but later on it took such a demonic role that people were oppressed because of their color, which was none of their fault, but they were oppressed. The blacks were oppressed by whites. You'll be surprised to know if you read about apartheid. There were separate seats in public transport, in buses or trains for blacks and whites, and the blacks were not supposed to sit on the seats which were reserved for whites, and even the benches were reserved. Blacks could not sit on benches which were reserved for whites only. Next is Anglo-Boer War. Now this war was between the two Republican states of South Africa and British and Britain. So this war began in the last years of the 19th century, around 1899, and it continued till 2 or 3 years, and the British were victorious in this war. British were victorious, and this war, I want you to know about this because this is mentioned in your text later, so you should have a previous knowledge of this war. Okay, now Constitution and democratic. I hope you all are absolutely clear about these terms, but we'll just revise it once. Constitution, you all have studied in your social science that Constitution is a written set of rules or principles for a particular state or country in a written form. Then democratic. Democracy or democratic form of government is supposed to be the fairest forms of governments all over the world, as it is by the people, of the people, for the people. Now, why are these all related to Nelson Mandela? So Nelson Mandela was a political leader, he was a revolutionary, and he was President of South Africa from 1994 to 1999. And he was the first black president of South Africa. First black president. And for the first time, a democratic government was formed, and his party won with 252 votes out, 252 seats out of 400 by the democratic form of elections. And the party was African National Congress. The party of Nelson Mandela won elections in 1994, and the party was African National Congress. So this was a little bit of information which I believe you should be aware of before going through the chapter. After knowing all this, it will be much convenient for you to read the chapter. So after this, I would like you all to go through the chapter word by word. It is very informative and it is interesting also. Of course, it is the autobiography of Mandela. So read it and then I'll summarize it for you in my next video. Till then, take care, read thoroughly, read with interest, stay safe, stay home. Thank you.